All right, we have James Kaplan here from MeetKai with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, James. I mean, you guys were actually instrumental in a play that we did, the Metaversal team did at this past AWE, in helping us build some incredible WebXR environments where we actually demonstrated live portaling from one environment or world to another, and they were beautiful. So thank you so much for your key involvement and in showcasing the power of the immersive web.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for having me. It's very important for us to be part of the WebXR community since we're very, very passionate about encouraging adoption. And most particularly for WebXR is just the connectivity. I mean, that's the entire point of it being on the web. So it's been great to help you guys at Metaversal. I'm happy to be here today.
Absolutely. And so for people that don't know you, can you give a brief background on you and your company?
Sure. So my company, MeetKai, I co-founded it 4 years ago now. And, our company for the past 4 years has not been working on any metaverse space. Our background is in AI. And the reason we're really interested in this metaverse space is because I think it's, if you can apply AI in the right places, then you could really make a, much more interesting world compared to just, a standard 3D space.
So tell us a little bit about that, because that's an interesting angle to be predominantly an AI company coming into the WebXR space, because a lot of people don't even know how those could be relevant technologies to one another. So why have you chosen to enter the metaverse space, and why do you think AI is such a key element of the metaverse?
Yes. So last year, we actually saw a lot of the stuff happening with the metaverse. And our original goal was just to create NPC characters that could kind of exist at different people's virtual worlds and carry out tasks. Just because, our background in AI predominantly has been deploying voice assistants and similar types of technology pretty heavily globally. And with the metaverse, we thought, this would be a very interesting platform because with a voice assistant on a phone, it's like a 2D interface in many ways, and it feels very like impersonal. But if you actually have like a character in a virtual world that can do tasks for you, then it's like way more, I think, compelling to a person. But when we started out, we were just trying to create the AI for it. But the main thing that we really hit was that the lock-in into the Unity really was not something we wanted to kind of encourage. And we really wanted to be able to have our characters be able to interact with the web at large. And that's kind of how we happened into this WebXR space, because it seems like a very natural solution. If you want to have, artificial intelligence characters, they should live on the web, not in a Unity game.
Yeah, definitely. And you hit on something very interesting, because you're using AI almost as an artificial socialization mechanism for people's interactions in these spaces. Why do you think that is such an important part of what the metaverse will become, or what people are expecting in terms of interacting with these spaces?
So I think a real challenge for the metaverse right now is that I've seen a lot of interesting spaces at times, but if there's no one else in them, then why are you there? And it's kind of like when a lot of people are trying to start social networks, almost 10 years ago now, right? And everyone's trying to start the next social network for, I don't know, dog owners. But if there were no dog owners, then why would you want to join that social network? And for the metaverse, if everyone's trying to create these interesting spaces and there's nothing to do in them, and there's no other people to be in it with, then it's a problem. And even more importantly, it's like, yes, some people are coming up with things you can do in them, but then if there's no other people, it's still boring. You might as well just play a single player game. It's not the metaverse. So with AI, it provides a nice little bridge to kind of act as, step one is really have spaces that have sort of a multi-user experience, even if there aren't other people there. Step two, step three, et cetera, for us that we see a very long term is that the metaverse is this persistent world. People are going in between different persistent worlds as well. Then the artificial intelligence character should also be able to kind of traverse those portals to different worlds. But short term, at least, it's very much about allowing for the metaverse to function without mass adoption.
I was just about to say that, like, at least in the short term, you're really solving for the lack of mass adoption right now. So to get people initially interested in being a part of these spaces, even when there may or may not be another live person there. So I think that is definitely critical, and even showcasing these brands that this can happen without mass adoption right now, and we can still keep people engaged and entertained in very meaningful ways. And how about like, I know that AI is one part of it, but then we hear about, the crypto blockchain NFT space. How is that potentially a part of what you're doing or what you're hoping to incorporate into your builds in the future?
So, I think the blockchain is very interesting, and in my mind, I try to separate like blockchain from like a lot of these Web3 fads of the day, just because I think sometimes blockchain is a technology, and then any application of it is just an application of it. We see blockchain as a very valuable technology because it accomplishes something that I think is almost prerequisite of a lot of this concept of the metaverse in the browser, which is like shared state. Um, because as much as I hate to say it, I really don't want the metaverse to be about. I don't hate to say it, but I really don't want the metaverse to be about everyone having a Facebook account, right? Where you log into your Facebook account on every single site, and that's just how you navigate the metaverse. I think it's going to be much better if it's a lot more decentralized. And I think that's what the blockchain enables. Now, at the same time, I think there's been a lot of hesitation in that a lot of companies kind of like start with the blockchain and then try to bolt stuff on top as like a business model. Um, and that kind of leads to a lot of um, I guess failures to do what users want. Like users don't necessarily want to buy land with crypto; they might just want to buy land. Like the crypto element, I think, is secondary. So it's like an implementation detail. For us right now, our uses of blockchain predominantly are behind the scenes, where we had an event that we did that had crypto elements, but it was not on a public chain, and it was not sort of like front and center of how crypto worked. But it's more so laying the groundwork for like once other companies are also trying to do things with the blockchain on the metaverse in WebXR, we want to be able to interact with them. So that's really where our focus is right now, is how you're going to, the portals from Metaversal is one thing, right? Going from place to place. But like, how do you really have much more connectivity without a centralized area, right? Because like a lot of companies are doing centralized solutions to that. I think we all know the names of them out there, but very few, I think, are actually trying to make it decentralized.
Well, yeah, I mean, it fits into this whole premise of why we're doing this whole summit on the immersive web. Also, it's, this idea of interoperability, and blockchain definitely fits right into that premise of a single point of authentication that kind of converses across borders, right? And so I definitely think the marrying of those technologies is definitely important and very in sync with the ideologies of what they're trying to achieve. But in your mind, why is WebXR so important to all of this, and why the browser?
So, I think the hardest thing right now is that if you want to do something in VR at the moment, your options pretty much are use Unity or use WebXR. But if you use Unity, um, you're pretty much shipping to one store for VR, and then you don't really have any, I would say, great way of having the people that don't have head-mounted displays from interacting with the metaverse. So for WebXR in the browser, the real reason why we're so bullish on it is that it allows you to have a space that both people using a VR headset consume, or people on mobile, or people on tablets, or people on desktops, Chromebooks, wherever, and also be anywhere in the world. Something that we've learned as being a global company. Most of our work has not been in the U.S. Most of our work has been in Latin America, Middle East, Europe, Southeast Asia, and encouraging people to download an app to do something in a metaverse, I think, will be a non-starter for brands. Like, it's already so hard to get people to like be interested in you as a brand. I mean, everyone tried to do like their own apps struggled, right? And that's why a lot of brands use Instagram and things like that, because they get to just be on the common platform. Um, but if you look at people with phones, they also all have browsers. So the metaverse and WebXR are very, I think, natural coupling in these early stages. I mean, again, 5 years later, if everyone has a VR headset because or mixed reality headset, if they walk around, it might be different. But for now, if you want to build something in the metaverse, I think WebXR is like table stakes.
100%. It's all about reducing the hurdles, reducing the friction to gaining access to whatever it is people are looking to gain access to, especially when we're talking about brands who are selling something. I mean, every hurdle you put in the way of consumer is, potentially a customer lost, or a higher percentage of customers lost there. So how do you think mobile and non-HMD 6DoF platforms fit into the realm of the metaverse?
I think to me, the coolest thing of the metaverse is really being able to experience, like in a very tangible way, what these 3D spaces offer. And for a brand, I think so much of what they do is about, they always talk about like the lifestyle, right? Or like the image that's presenting. And being able to experience sort of that same perception of the brand, whether you're on a mobile device or a VR headset, without having to develop two different experiences is extremely critical, I think. At least in our work, is that, we've talked to some of these brands, none of them want to invest in purely a VR experience because they see it as, oh, how many percentage of our customers might have a VR headset. On the other hand, they don't want to invest in purely a mobile experience because they say, oh, well, we already invested all this amount in mobile and we don't want to then have to reinvest again with VR. Mm-hmm. So it's like WebXR allows you to kind of pitch to these brands, look, you'll be on the metaverse now. People can access you from mobile now. And as your users buy head-mounted displays, you'll be one of the first places they go.
Yep, make one investment and having it be relevant and accessible now, but also super relevant as we move into the future, and having their investment be able to scale. I mean, that's an important message to bring to the brands when, talking about, putting up this initial investment money and funding for these types of projects. And I know a common hurdle that creators are facing when developing to the web is low poly graphics and environments and those types of things, because inevitably things right now look a lot better when it's built to a specific VR platform. But you guys are doing something really special right now to help enable better graphics in the browser. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Happy to talk about it, also happy to show you a bit too.
Okay.
The main thing that we found when we set off on this browser mission is that, people pick low poly, I think, as an artifact of the performance, as opposed to them saying low poly is the style we want to go for, therefore this is what we're going to do. It's oftentimes, ooh, getting that frame rate's really, really hard, so I guess we're using low poly. But I think the challenge is that, a lot of the people who are looking at these things are forgetting how hard it was to make games for years on very poor performing machines. A lot of tricks had to be used to get graphics that look good. And, in my 2 cents, I think that a lot of people who work on the metaverse have not worked in the gaming business before. So they don't know how hard it is to do some of this, asset work. And they just assume that if it fails the first time, then it's not possible. And what we found is that, this started off as largely a research project, where it was, could we use AI to optimize the assets? Since that's really the missing piece right now, is that, like, how do you take a scene that looks good but performs poorly and make it still look good but perform well? And that type of task is actually very well solved through AI. And, we're still at the early stages of productionizing this. But what we have now, what we can show, we feel is better than, in terms of graphics fidelity, than stuff that runs natively.
Let's see it.
Perfect. So our goal with this demo was really try to figure out, is it possible to make things in the browser that actually look, good? Because we really were based on this assumption that, hey, if you have a low poly sort of echoey block structure in the metaverse, then it's not really that interesting because people aren't going to want to buy it. And I think that's been one of the biggest issues so far with a lot of these metaverse deployments. And what we figured out is kind of the trick to a lot of this is lighting. What makes something look good versus bad in most 3D graphics is very heavily lighting, such that, without the lighting, it just looks kind of sad and very much de-immersive. And what you're seeing here is an example of what we figured out how to do, which is a much more hybrid approach to lighting that blends both ahead of time, server-side, and client-side lighting to actually accomplish something that's a lot closer to real life. When we've shown this type of demo to brands, the reception we usually get is very, very positive, because for them, they aren't that interested in, having those types of blocky, low poly art and then like a little thumbnail on top. What they really want is to be able to replicate not only the vibe and the experience of their stores, but even more importantly, the products themselves. And, we have a mix of different objects that we have scanned in or pulled from other scan sources as demos of this, because the challenge is that, aside from just the store and the lighting, oftentimes getting objects that are 3D scanned to run performantly is very challenging, because most of those models really aren't made for games. And that's another reason why low poly assets are used. However, what we figured out how to do is to really, really push this envelope and figure out how to optimize assets much, much better than current tools in the market. And this is largely done through AI. We're still very early on in this process. And I mean, if you look really closely, you'll notice some of the artifacts. And the reason those artifacts happen is, interestingly enough, because a lot of the process optimization is done in this way of saying, okay, how close does this look to the original asset relative to runtime performance? And, as I said, we're still very early on this process, but we are very confident that, within 1 to 2 months, this will be publicly available. And we already have a pretty large flagship deployment scheduled for end of November. So it's very exciting to start showing this as an early preview to everyone.
That was an awesome demonstration, James. I mean, it's very rare to see that kind of graphic fidelity in the browser, and that just shows, how far we've come and how much further there is to go with the utilization of these mediums. And believe me, being in one of your worlds in a headset is that much better than seeing it on 2D. So I definitely encourage you guys to get in touch with James and team and check out what they're doing. See if you can get a demo and sneak peek at some of the stuff they're working on. It's very incredible work, and you're doing the whole industry a service by proving the power and the value of WebXR and the immersive web.
Thank you, Sophia. That's exactly our goal. If we can get more people working on the immersive web, then it's better for everyone who's building anything, linking to other things on the immersive web. So really glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.